So the Acolyte episodes 1 and 2 just aired yesterday on June 4th on Disney Plus, and already it's off to a bad start when it comes to the audience side of things. When it comes to the Star Wars fans that grew up on George Lucas's Star Wars, that grew up with the originals and the prequels, and even though the prequels went through, a heavy amount of years of criticism, it still never was on the same level of the sequel trilogy movies by Disney/Lucasfilm under Kathleen Kennedy's wing. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. You could also follow me at Mike01. I thank you all so very much for the great and kind support. So, Leslye Headland, we know that she, as of course the director and the showrunner of this series, is one who has been endlessly defending this thing like there's no tomorrow. She has been defending this series at all costs, and how she has been spewing the fact that it's all about representing this and that, and how everyone is basically just blowing things out of proportion when it comes to the overall structure of the Acolyte series. Now look, if you have seen episode 1 and 2, if you actually have the subtitles on and you actually go through all the dialogue, you can really see exactly where everything is going and just how bad the series already is. The dialogue's not there, the acting is clunky, the story has a lot of issues, just to say the least, but we'll talk more about the actual specifics of episode 1 and 2 later. Just you wait until episode 3, and Leslye Headland kind of alludes to that in a bit. So what's interesting about this has a lot to do with Leslye Headland and her overall reaction to the fan reactions of the Acolyte series and everything happening with, of course, episodes 1 and 2. Now again, like I said, we got episode 3 coming up on June 12th. The episodes are going to shift to Wednesdays, and that is going to be the very episode that's going to break Star Wars. I talked about this on Twitter, and we'll talk more about exactly why. Now, on top of everything here, with both Leslye Headland and Kathleen Kennedy already heavily defending the Acolyte, endlessly of course, one major development now has much to do with Headland's defensive response to fans over the recent reviews of the first 2 episodes of the series, where she was able to deliver the following. As a woman who is damn proud to be part of the LGBTQ community, I think from the reactions that I have seen a mixture of fans welcoming our series with open arms to all of these characters and actors that come from different communities, but you are always going to have a small margin of fans, if you even want to call them that. That will create a false narrative just to fit their agenda and acting as if Star Wars belongs to them. As a woman who represents the LGBTQ community, from the reactions that I have seen that can be quite negative, I think they are all out of place and disjointed, and those who have no idea what they are talking about when it comes to Star Wars, nor do they understand it. This is the High Republic after all. We are 100 years before The Phantom Menace, Star Wars Episode 1. So we are free to break so many rules and sort of start over in various ways with no complications and no consequence. The claim that our series is agenda-driven is complete nonsense and part of their narrative. They sort of have this thing against Kathleen Kennedy from what it seems for no reason at all. Look, like I said, as a proud woman who represents the LGBTQ community, we wanted to take things just a tad slow with how we represent that community in this series. I think once fans see episodes 3 and 4, they are really going to realize how much Kathy and I were able to change the definition of many things in Star Wars that George had created, and how the LGBTQ community will be represented. From the reactions that I have seen, there is obviously still the same loud, opinionated part of the community that is just the minority and not the majority. I would probably say 90% of people already love the Acolyte. It's one of Kathleen's greatest creations under Disney, and I am so honored to be part of this. So, guys, let me just stop here quick. So the fact that she says it's part of the minority still and not the majority is cementing things further, that she will say whatever she has to say no matter what to side with her agenda by saying the fans that are being very opinionated, and rightfully so by the way, those that are defending George Lucas's Star Wars, those that truly understand what Star Wars is about, then they are the ones that don't know what they're talking about. That's what Leslye Headland is basically saying. If you dare raise your opinion and are against my project, then you're the problem. That's what it really equals out to. And look, if you have seen episode 1 and 2, I say it right here, right now, it was pretty god-awful. You know, I think it was worse than Kenobi, I think it was worse than Mandalorian Season 3. Sorry, but that's how I see things. The acting is very clunky and out of whack. The dialogue, trust me, put the subtitles on. There's a lot of dialogue that is just so out of place and so poorly written to the point where it makes you wonder, why is Leslye Headland writing this thing in the first place, directing this thing in the first place? But I'll have more to talk about that, like I say, later, so stay tuned. She continues, it's one of Kathleen's greatest creations under Disney, and I am so honored to be a part of this. Look, you are always going to have toxic males that want to ruin the fun for others. This is a story that I really wanted to build for women, especially for women in the LGBTQ community, and Rian Johnson also was my inspiration for this story. It was just such an awe-inspiring experience to be part of Star Wars and to be the one who would transform it from the ground up. I was able to meet Ryan and we had great conversations of where the story needed to go before we started filming. He really put me on the right path to gain my confidence to tell my story the way I wanted, and Dave Filoni fully supported everything. So guys, again, I mean, this is a living example that Dave Filoni is no savior of Star Wars. He is the one that supports Leslye Headland, Harvey Weinstein's former personal assistant, that is really just pushing all this nonsense and shifting away from George. So just kind of put that in your mind there. Moving on. She goes on to conclude, every damn thing I did in this series, she likes to say damn, doesn't she? Every damn thing I did in this series, and how we are able to represent the LGBTQ community, which I think our community will be very proud in episode 3 next week, so keep a lookout for that. Because this episode, I think, is going to make Star Wars history for the new fans, just getting into Star Wars that want to learn more without watching all of George's stuff. This series was built to be its own thing, and to go in its own direction. Toxic males, I think, just need to stay away from Star Wars for the time being, because I think they are just clinging to when George missed the mark on so many things with his films of not representing the communities that never got the limelight that they deserve. Those that pretend to be fans should stay away from this series if you're not one that supports diversity, equity, and inclusion. So, let me just say one thing right now, really quick before I get on to things. Yes, she is alluding to episode 3, and yes, I talked about this on Twitter. Episode 3, and believe me on this, from what has actually gone through the production for episode 3, it is going to be the very episode that it will be the final nail in the coffin for Star Wars. It is going to, yes, absolutely redefine the Force and everything else related to what George Lucas had created, and not just that. We'll maybe talk more about this later, because it is interesting, to say the least, of how bad it's about to get with episode 3. It's gonna make The Last Jedi look good, as I like to point it out. But overall, I mean, we have a lot to talk about with the Acolyte. I mean, everything happening between Kathleen, Leslye, and the rest of the cast involved, and everything else happening with the fans. But overall, drop a comment below, fill me in below in the comments what you all have to say about this, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys later.